Hey, it's your buddy Bob, day 2 of our rock and roll travelogue in Philadelphia. And before the day is over, we're going to head east to central New Jersey. Well, tell you what, we're looking for those pop acts from the 1950s to 1990s. We spent the last episode of Rock and Roll Travelogue in the center of Philadelphia. Today we'll visit South Philly. It's the home to many early stars like Chubby Checker, born Ernest Evans in South Carolina, but Chubby grew up in South Philly. He was discovered at the famous Italian market right here at 919 South 9th Street. This was crowded on a Saturday afternoon when I was there. I must say I love my time here, walking around, talking to some really friendly people. The smells were fabulous and the food, just absolutely wonderful. Chubby Checker, when he was discovered at the Italian market, was soon signed to Cameo Parkway Records. We talked about them in the previous episode of Rock and Roll Travelogue. It was a Philadelphia record company. And of course, that led to appearances on the very famous American Bandstand, which was out of studios in Philadelphia in the early years. I remember hearing the host of American Bandstand, Dick Clark, say in an interview on a radio station that I worked at in Cleveland that his wife thought of young Ernest Evans as a little Fats Domino or a Chubby Checker. Cute, don't you think? Chubby's signature hit was The Twist. It was written by Hank Ballard, who is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, incidentally. Chubby Checker had a number one song with a twist twice, once in 1960, and again 2 years later, as the twist craze was taking the country by storm. Chubby lived in what is known as Queen Village in South Philadelphia at 5th Street and Christian. Here's the home, the blue one. When the house was sold in 2021, the listing noted that Chubby once lived here. His home was a minute down the street from the Settlement Music School. This is where he learned some of his early musical skills, and he's a big supporter of the school to this day. Sing, dance, play is what the school is all about. And by the way, a famous alum of this school is Kevin Bacon, the actor. Yeah, 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Well, anyway, finally, Chubby Checker will be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2025. As we travel around South Philly, we arrive at 2400 South 11th Street, where a young man named Robert Ritterelli grew up. He became Bobby Rydell, one of the teen idols of the late 50s and early 60s. In that period, his big hits were Wild One, Volare, and Forget Him. And here's a look down his street. In the production of Grease in the late 70s, the high school was referred to, you'll remember, as Rydell High, but that was in California. Well, another teen idol from South Philly was Frankie Avalon, who had played in a band with Bobby Rydell and with Fabian Forte, who would also become a teen idol with his good looks. Frankie Avalon lived in several places in South Philly, but for several years, he lived here on South Hamburger between 22nd and 23rd Streets. The roads in most of South Philly are quite narrow, and in traveling between Bobby Rydell's home and Frankie Avalon's home, it's a distance of less than 2 miles. The streets were in pretty rough shape on the poor side of town. Sad, isn't it? Here's a look down his street, Hamburger Street in South Philadelphia. Frankie Avalon. Biggest hits were Venus and Why, both number ones. He's famous for his role with the Musketeer Annette Funicello in the Beach Party movies of the 1960s. Well, let's move ahead a decade or two. We need to spotlight Teddy Pendergrass from Philadelphia, who started in the early 70s as the lead singer of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. After Teddy stepped in, it was a completely different story as they began to soar up the charts with songs like The Love I Lost and If You Don't Know Me By Now. Teddy left the group to go solo in 1978 and he had a hit called Close the Door. It was an R&B hit nominated for a Grammy. Teddy, like many performers, led a very troubled life at times. In 1977, for instance, his manager was killed execution style. In 1982, he crashed his car here at Lincoln and Rittenhouse. This was a single vehicle crash at nighttime. It paralyzed Teddy. He'd never walk again. The road's treacherous. I drove it myself in the daylight. It's narrow and it's winding, and it's next to a creek that feeds the Schuylkill River. The road can be flooded, as it was when I drove over it. Teddy would make his comeback 3 years later at Live Aid, held in the United States at John F. Kennedy Stadium, now Wells Fargo Arena in Philadelphia. Live Aid was organized for the benefit of poor African nations. The event, by the way, was organized by Bob Geldof, who earlier fronted the band from Ireland called the Boomtown Rats. John F. Kennedy Stadium in Philadelphia is where the annual Army-Navy football game was played for years. Across the street from the former JFK Stadium is the Philadelphia Phillies Stadium, known as Citizens Bank Park. And next door is Lincoln Financial Field, where Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles play football. Well, Teddy Pendergrass died at age 59, and he's buried here at West Laurel Hill Cemetery in suburban Bala-Cynwyd. The cemetery is a rural cemetery in the country, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places. Many famous people are buried here. I was given a tour, and it was most informative, and I want to thank the people at West Laurel Hill. Well, on to the Jersey Shore. Let's hit Asbury Park, New Jersey for one of the biggest stars of all time, Bruce Springsteen. But our first stop is in Belmar, New Jersey. It's about 4 miles from Asbury Park. Here at 10th Street and E Street is a guitar. It's in front of the Belmar Library. This, of course, is reference to the early Springsteen hit, 10th Avenue Freeze Out. Down the street on E Street is the former home of David Sancious. This is where Springsteen and his early bandmates would practice in the garage. The band became known as the E Street Band, and they back up Springsteen for years. Other members of the E Street Band, besides David Sancious, who were in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, are Stevie Van Zandt. He's a co-founder of Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. Nils Lofgren, formerly of Crazy Horse, associated with Neil Young, and Clarence Clemens, a saxophonist. And now, greetings from Asbury Park. Of course, that was the name of Springsteen's first album. Speaking of Clarence Clemens, the big man as he was known, he's said to have met Springsteen here at the Porta restaurant at 911 Kingsley Street. The restaurant, by the way, still stands, and it was quite busy the day that I stopped in, enjoyed it. A short walk across the street from Porta is the famous Stone Pony at 913 Ocean Avenue in Asbury Park. Many major acts have played here since it was opened in the 70s, but none bigger than Springsteen. The Wonder Bar is down the street at 1213 Ocean Avenue. It's called the Tunnel of Love, after Springsteen's late 80s album of the same name. That album reflected on his state of mind as his marriage to actress Julianne Phillips was crumbling. Speaking of wives, this is where Springsteen met musicians Patti Scialfa, later his wife since 1991, by the way, and E Street Band member Nils Lofgren met his wife here too. This is the Upstage. Now, this was formerly called the Upstage Club at 702 Cookman Avenue. Some say this is where Springsteen played his first gig in town. You can see the Upstage chiseled at the top of the building. We've got to visit the Asbury Park Boardwalk area. It's along the shoreline at the convention center. It was not a nice day when I was there. I visited. It was cold and rainy. It's near the convention center, and right down the street is a mural of Bruce and the E Street Band in the 1980s. The Fast Lane Club, right down the street from here, at 207 4th Avenue. It no longer stands. Today, it's a vacant lot, and it's next to the Asbury Lanes, which itself has hosted many musical acts. It's thought that Springsteen and fellow New Jersey native John Bon Jovi played here together for the first time. Speaking of John Bon Jovi, we'll visit his story momentarily. But first, on to Long Branch, New Jersey, where Bruce Springsteen was born. You'll notice that the sign is dedicated to the memories of the proprietors of the Windmill Restaurant. Here's a picture of this fun-looking restaurant, the Windmill. Well, at 7.5 West End Court is the Born to Run house. This is where Springsteen wrote his famous album, Born to Run. I promised more on John Bon Jovi, so let's talk about him. Born John Francis Bon Jovi, Jr., by the way, born in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. Bon Jovi lived here in Parlin, New Jersey. It's a section of Sayreville where he graduated high school from Sayreville War Memorial. He formed his band, Bon Jovi, in the early 80s, and he and bandmate Richie Sambora wrote most of the songs, including the first number one in 1986, You Give Love a Bad Name, followed by Living on a Prayer, Bad Medicine, I'll Be There for You in the late 80s, the first three of which were co-written by Desmond Child, who's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Speaking of the Hall of Fame, let's recap the artists we visited today that are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Chubby Checker this year, 2025, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, and Bon Jovi. Well, until next time on Rock and Roll Travelogue, this is your buddy Bob saying good heart and stout luck.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.